in case anyone here was wondering, this is not the sermon I had intended to give when I woke up Tuesday morning. As of when I started putting pen to paper, we were just beginning to process our heightened emotions as Iran launched somewhere around 200 rockets at Israel. Israelis were just emerging from bomb shelters as we watched videos of rockets flying over the Western Wall. To add to it, earlier there was the terrorist shooting that took place at a train station in Jaffa that left 8 Israelis dead. Israel has vowed to retaliate, and Iran has vowed to retaliate to whatever Israel does in retaliation, and there are now IDF forces clashing with Hezbollah in Lebanon that has left a few Israeli soldiers dead, and we still don't have our hostages back. There might be more news to the story. I haven't checked my phone in the last 2 hours. As I was watching the news, my heart went straight to our shlichim who've become family to us. As some of you may know, my wife Allison is an assistant director at the Union for Reform Judaism's Crane Lake Camp. She oversees camper care and not only helps campers deal with social emotional issues, but she also helps counselors come up with strategies for working with their campers, amongst many other things. I'm sure when she hears the sermon in the late service, she's going to tell me that I described what she does like describing the job of a rabbi as someone who just leads services on Friday nights. But her camp has a wonderful program with a mishlachet, with the shlichim, who are Israelis who come over to work at the camp and are ambassadors of Israel. When they came at the beginning of summer, there was a lot of trepidation from them. Omri, our song leader, he is the one, if you follow my wife on Facebook, that surprised Gavin and picked him up from school, and Gavin went running over and jumped into his arms. Omri, our song leader, was greatly concerned that when he sings the word Israel in any prayer, there might be young progressive counselors who would then shout out, "Free Palestine." You see, he had been in Israel watching the news reports about college encampments, calls for global intifadas, Jews for Palestine, and on, and didn't know what to expect from a camp staff that he knew very much identified as progressive. Instead, what he found was that when singing about Israel, each camper tried to outshout each other and yell the word Israel with as much joy as they could muster. That every camper and counselor would stand at attention, and with great smiles, they would sing Hatikva at the flagpole every Shabbat. And when the shlichim would say the names of their fallen friends, those who had just been killed during the conflict for Mourners Kaddish and the Shloshim, they always had someone ready to embrace them in an empathetic hug as they held back tears. The moment that got me, the moment that still has me crying, was when Ben, a counselor for the Nitzanim campers, my son Matthew's unit, was recalled for reservist duty. He got notice either on Thursday or Friday that by Sunday morning at 7 a.m. he had to be on a flight back to Israel. He was being sent back to the Rafah corridor. That Saturday night at Havdalah, our faculty gave him a special traveler's blessing for protection. He was standing in the center of concentric circles with his fellow shlichim. They told the campers that he was going back to serve. By the end of the service, there was not one dry eye in the camp, and all the kids rushed him, and he was enveloped in this giant hug of love and care. Nir, a unit head, said to me afterwards, this big hulking guy, that he was crying and in tears for 2 reasons. The first is he knew where he was going and what he would be facing. And the second, that hug that Ben got was what every Israeli needed, he told me. That hug is what every Israeli needed back then, and that hug is what every Israeli needs right now. The sermon I was going to deliver was not this one. Who knows, maybe you'll hear that one on Kol Nidre. But I couldn't be here this morning and not discuss what is still so fresh on our hearts and minds. First, let me address the elephant in the room. No, I don't know what's happening with our congregational trip to Israel in just a few weeks. I pray to God that it will be safe enough to go, but as you all know, things progress quickly. Second, we are all sitting with the great uncertainty of what's about to happen before us, holding in one hand the fear and the dread and the safety concerns that we have around us here in America as Jews who are witnessing this event and feeling the pain that others are inflicting upon us, but also holding the uncertainty of what the future holds as both Israel and Iran are promising retaliation back and forth. Not to mention any trepidation that we might have about even voicing an opinion about what's going on and who it's safe to voice those opinions to. Early in February, I was invited to a birthday party of one of my closest friends in New York City. It was 3 couples. It was at a restaurant called Freeman's, at the end of an alley called Freeman Alley, aptly named. The alley has developed a bit of notoriety for being filled with social justice graffiti. As we walked down the alley to the restaurant, we saw a mix of Free Gaza art, Bring Home the Hostages art, pro-Ukrainian art, and I would say the rest and the majority of the art could be filled into the whole, how do I put it? Politicians, police, Supreme Court, anybody of power, they're all corrupt and they need to go category of art. During the dinner, the wife sat at one end of the table and chatted, and the 3 of us, friends since high school, chatted on the other end. Eventually, the conversation got to the Middle East. I won't tell you who said what, but one of us believed that this was a just war, fought justly. The consequences, loss of life, destruction, whatever it would take, didn't matter. That there needed to be a decisive victory, one in which all the hostages are returned, and Hamas needed to be completely and utterly annihilated, and of course fear of Israel restored as a deterrent. Another one of us thought that it was a just war, fought perhaps justly, that Hamas needed to be defeated, that the hostages needed to be returned home, but that Israel could maybe be doing a better job with collateral damage. This sentiment came along with a healthy dose of skepticism about what was really driving Netanyahu and his true political motivations for this type of response. And the third thought it was an unjust war fought unjustly, and that they should only be using diplomacy to get the hostages back. And perhaps this was a good lesson as to why there should be a second state. All of us Jews, all of us with different opinions. He said that he had told his father what he had just told us. Okay, so now you know that wasn't me. And his father called him a traitor to his race. To the best of my knowledge, they haven't had much communication since then. We have been friends for decades. And while some of us may have had a hard time empathizing with each other's points of view, we still ended dinner with hugs. On my way out, I had wanted to take pictures of the graffiti and bring it back to all of you, perhaps in a sermon someday. But the lighting was horrible. It was an alley. The photos didn't come out. So I planned to come back at a later date and photograph it. But then 1 week turned into 2, and then it didn't happen. A month later, I went on a rabbinic mission to Israel. I visited places like Sderot, Kfar Aza, as well as the site of the Nova Music Festival. Places that had seen so much unimaginable destruction that started a year ago this coming Monday. But more powerful than visiting these sites was meeting with people. For example, while we were at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, we met with the family members of Alon Ohel, whose photograph is with us on the bima, and who has been held hostage since October 7th. A little bit about him from his mother. Alon is just a beautiful person. You know, everybody meets him is really easy to talk to. And he has many, many friends. He loves gourmet food, he loves cars, anything that has to do with cars. And he's a pianist. He loves to play the piano and music in general. That's why he was at the Nova party that day. He was planning on taking some courses in Ramon's School of Music. That was one of his plans before he was kidnapped. He's now 23. He had his birthday as a hostage in Gaza on February 10th, the same week that I was at a birthday party in Freeman Alley. The morning we met with Alon's family, we went for a walking tour of the graffiti art in Tel Aviv. I was so deeply moved by it. Artwork begging for the hostages to be freed. So very different than the artwork that I saw on Freeman Alley. The artwork, for the most part, by the way, is in English. Why might you guess the artwork's in English, considering we were in Tel Aviv? Because the artwork was for all of us at home to remind us of what was going on. What a stark difference from what I saw in Freeman Alley. When I returned to the States, I went back to the alley as soon as I could, and the art had dramatically changed. All the art about bringing the hostages home were painted over and gone. And while there was still art that begged for the preservation of Palestinian life, there was now art that I believe delves into anti-Semitism. Writing "Let Gaza Live" to me is not anti-Semitic. It's a call to remember that there are innocent people who are being affected, that there is collateral damage. However, it is anti-Semitic to me to write "You are on stolen land" with the Jewish star. The red triangle, by the way, you'll see this a few times. The inverted red triangle has been used by pro-Palestinian protesters. The red triangle as a Palestinian symbol dates back to the Arab Revolt, after which it was also used in the Palestinian flag, but more recently, combat footage published by Hamas itself uses an inverted red triangle as an arrow to indicate Israeli military targets, such as tanks, just before they are struck. It's overlaid here as a way of indicating that they believe Israel is on top of Palestinian land. Here's another example. The butchers of Gaza, the river to the sea. there is a special place in hell for Zionists next to Kissinger. Zionism is terrorism. Never forget how the New York Police Department murdered Eric Gardner, trained by the IDF. How different these two images are. You'll see the red triangle underneath the Eric Gardner. I think back to that dinner that I had, the three of us with very different opinions. I think about our community. As I was giving the sermon, many of you nodded at different moments when I was talking about the different opinions. And yet we're all here together in the same house. We all have similar concerns. We all have similar fears. We all don't know how this is going to end. But we do know that we can dwell together in the same house, that we can feel shattered together, that we can look for repair together, that we might not be all that different from each other as we think. There are many things that I've just put before you. Gaza and Hamas, Hezbollah and Lebanon, Iran and Israel, anti-Israel, anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, and our connection to it. Family infighting when it comes to what Israel is doing in responding to threats, rockets and terrorist attacks. And I haven't even mentioned college encampments and the political strife we see all around us. Those, by the way, were going to be in the original sermon. There's enough here to make each and every one of us curl into an emotional, if not physical, ball. Know this: you are not alone. You are not alone in your pain. You are not alone in your fear. You are not alone in your uncertainty. You are not alone in your sadness. You are not alone in feeling alone. I am feeling those things, and each person here is feeling those emotions as well. But you are not alone. And we as a community are here for one another in our joy and in our sadness, in our devotion and in our doubt, in our belief that the future will always be brighter than the past, and that our long history as Jews, we have overcome much worse than this, and we will overcome this because this too shall pass, even if we don't know when. I want to offer you a poem, a prayer, written by an Israeli colleague of mine, Rabbi Oded Mazer, which I think conceptualizes for us what many of us are feeling as we look out towards the world. In the days when each hour collides with the next, we have no choice but to cry and to laugh with the same eyes, to mourn and to dance at the same time. And when the long arc of history is compressed into a single day, to a single hour, we ask for the strength to contain the intensity of our bursting hearts, to rejoice with those who will be able to embrace today, to enfold all those leaning into their longing souls, trembling, to hold on to hope without letting go, and to leave some quiet space for a silent scream. Please, oh God, please, God, grant us the room to shatter into pieces. But God, do not forget, give us the spirit, give us the strength, give us the desire to be rebuilt and to be rebuilt anew. Amen. And Shana Tova.